I think some things were misaligned between our group and the property manager, where the property manager was really focused on getting people into the units, and some of the screening that should have been done probably wasn't, because we ended up having to evict 3/4 of the tenants that were placed by that first property manager.
Whoa.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Mack Benson is a husband, a father of 3 children. He's a real estate investor, also working a full-time job in information technology. Mack, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Mack. There are 3 questions I ask every guest who comes to the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Where did I start? I started real estate like everybody else does, in Rich Dad Poor Dad, but mine was in about 2001 and didn't quite do anything with it, as in I did nothing with it until about 2018 when I was listening to just a random podcast. It was about making yourself a better person, because that's what I was into at the time. And the guy he was interviewing a real estate investor, but the guy was a surgeon and he was buying apartments on the side. I was like, you know what? If he's doing it, I probably can too.
And so that's where'd you start? Where are you now?
Right now, I've got 44 units, 40 of them a single apartment complex that was a 2021 build, that when we toured it, it was literally 2x4s and a couple pieces of sheetrock on the 3rd floor.
Wow. Okay, cool. So you bought that building in when it was finished, I would assume?
Yep. Right at the tail end of 2021.
Okay.
And it's been a work in progress since. So it's been taking all of the attention.
For that 44 unit building.
Yep. Yeah, cool. It was obviously new build, so completely vacant. So our value add was to get people to live in it.
Right. Well, talk to us about that. This is your first syndication. Are you the lead sponsor on this deal? So this is, or is it just solely your deal? So
we were going to syndicate it. We ended up going through the entire process. We had all the paperwork drawn up, PPM, everything ready to go, bank accounts open, ready to start taking funds. And then the seller/builder came to us and said, hey, would you guys be open to seller financing? You know what? Talk to us about that. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And what he proposed, we took it back to our underwriting and said, you know what? This actually makes it a lot better for us. So we're going to pull back and say, can we come up with the down payment he's looking for without syndicating?
Right.
And turns out the partners that we had on board that were going to be our key principal on the syndication said, you know what, we want to stay in this. And they were able to help get us the entire down payment, and off to the races we went.
Okay. Now that is interesting. What were the terms that the seller proposed that made it good for them, but also a win for you?
Mainly the down payment. So we were looking at having to put up about, our total acquisition was going to be about $2 million out of pocket to begin with.
So $2 million in equity were going in the deal?
Yep.
Okay.
And his proposal brought it down to $800K. Plus we were going to need operating expense and operating account.
Sure.
So it cut what our total capital contribution by about half.
Right.
And then rate was good. I mean, what was that, 2021? So, I mean, if you were looking at agency, you could have gotten in the 3s. If you remember back then.
I do.
And I think we're at 4.5, which back then we were like, you know what, it's a little bit high. Okay, today that sounds like a steal. And the term was good also because the term was going to bring us into 2026.
Okay, so you got a 5-year term, fixed. I'm assuming at 4.5%.
Yep.
Okay, and what happens in 2026?
Balloon, refinance, sell, or extend if that's available. But with what rates are doing, doubt that's going to be available from the financing.
What did the seller gain by owner financing it? Were they trying to offset taxes? What was their play? Do you know?
Yeah, he did not want that big giant income that he was going to have to pay taxes on. So this is extending it out for him. He's getting the interest payments, which he wouldn't have gotten. I mean, he's going to end up getting more than he got to begin with the interest payments that we're giving him.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, it was a tax strategy there. So you've got this 44 unit building. It's your first commercial real estate asset, if I'm not mistaken. Is that?
It is.
Yeah. And so you said it's taken all of your attention and focus. So I guess this would be now 2 years in of owning this asset. What are some things that you've learned owning and operating this asset? What would you do differently?
One of the biggest things we've learned is that property management can make or break a deal.
Mhm.
We are currently on our third property manager, which has been tough. And if you've ever transitioned from one property manager to another, I mean, it takes the second one 2 months to even figure out where the light switches are.
Right.
And then they're having to clean up whatever they don't like and whatever the owner doesn't like from the previous property manager. I mean, there's a reason you left the original to begin with.
Yep.
And I mean, we're 9 months in with a third property manager, and we're about 2 months from having our head above water.
When you say head above water, when you feel like you finally solved all of the kinks in the system?
Yep. And we're finally in a place where instead of re-tenanting for business reasons, we're on a normal cadence of filling units that are in the process of moving out. We're finally not chasing our tails.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. On a brand new build, like I've seen, tenant turnover, not tenant turnover, I've seen property management turnover in difficult to manage assets, in the wrong, Class C assets, and or, there's just some problems that come along with certain types and location assets. It's like, okay, well, it's gonna be harder just based upon where the asset is. But a brand new build seems like something where property management could come in and have it's a clean slate. What were the things that maybe they didn't expect that they encountered?
One of the things that we worked through was some of the tenant screening that had gone on, or lack of. I think some things were misaligned between our group and the property manager, where the property manager was really focused on getting people into the units, and some of the screening that should have been done probably wasn't, because we ended up having to evict 3/4 of the tenants that were placed by that first property manager.
Whoa.
Yeah, there was some pains. It was rough. And luckily we had gone into the project well capitalized, knowing that we were going to be operating in the red we expected 9 months. We didn't expect 15 months.
Right. Have you guys hit black yet? I know you said 15 months. It sounded like at 15 months or so you started to actually have those colors switch a little bit.
Yep, we are running in the black.
That's good.
Yeah, we had a couple surprises along the way, other than the tenant issues. From the first property manager, one of the first tenants that they had placed started a fire. which was our first insurance claim, and then we had a flood, which was a second. So within the first 7 months of operation, we were back into a construction zone, which put the second property manager in a really awkward position for showing units through a construction zone.
Right.
So yeah,
What do
reconstruction and rehab is done. Tenants are in. We're at the break even. We're at or above our break even occupancy, and things are humming along.
Right. No, man, that's a tough project for even seasoned veterans. Like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, do you feel like when you run the tape back, were there things that you could have or should have done differently to have avoided many of these pitfalls?
So for the first, I would say for the first two managers, we weren't necessarily, I don't think we were paying attention as well as we should have.
Yeah.
And that's something we learned. We learned our lesson, and it did not repeat.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Pay attention, man. And that's tough, especially when there's so many moving, like you in that early stage, you're pushing hard and you're hoping that everyone else is taking care of what they're supposed to take care of because you've got limited bandwidth, especially if you're still working a job. And it's like, okay, well, I'm hoping the property manager's doing right. And instead they're just slapping tenants in there. Anybody that applies, oh, you have a pulse? Cool. Yeah, come on in. You can come, you can, and then you're kicking out 75% of those. What'd you say? 10 months later? I mean,
yeah, within the first year. As soon as the eviction moratoriums were over, we were in the, what was it, a 3-month line of other owners trying to do the same thing.
right. Oh man. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. Looking back on this deal, are you still glad you did it?
I am. I have basically gotten a PhD in operations in my first deal. I mean, who else can say that? I was at an event last year just talking to some other guys about the experiences that I've had. I mean, just to get this deal over the finish line to close, I mean, that was a process because we ended up doing seller financing, brought in a 1031. We were going to syndicate. So it's like, okay, you pretty much covered all your bases on there, and you hadn't even closed yet. And then with a fire, with a flood, they said, well, you're only missing blood. I'm like, all right, so I guess I have one more thing that I have on the horizon at some point in some deal. Hopefully not this one.
Right.
Other than me smashing a finger, swinging a hammer at some point.
Right. Right. May that be the only blood you ever see at one of your properties. And even then, try to avoid that if you can. Tell me about this, working a full-time job. I mean, you're still full-time IT, still managing this project. Where does your real estate investing career go from this point forward?
One day the real estate will be this, I'd say the sole focus, but I've still got the kids and the wife. So not the sole focus, but the primary source of income will be real estate at some point.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me about the size. Like a 40 unit building or 44 unit building. Has that made it challenging to find good property management where you are, or is that no problem?
Yes and no. And it's kind of funny because when we were still under contract, working towards close, we interviewed a number of property managers and landed on the first one that we ended up with. We had actually interviewed the property manager that we currently have in that first wave and decided not to go with them. We were nervous about their lack of experience because they had never managed an apartment before. All they did was single families, duplexes, quads, but never anything in the apartment world. They really wanted to, but they just hadn't found an operator that would take them on yet. So 9-10 months later, we were back talking to them, and they had evolved as a company. They had gotten a lot of their processes and systems and processes had gotten a lot smoother and more professional and ironed out. And it seemed like a great fit. And so far, it definitely has been.
Oh, that's interesting, because you would think that the people with the experience would be the right ones to hire, but maybe not necessarily so. Maybe the ones that are really willing to put in the work and do the right thing uh, is far more valuable. Very, very interesting, Mac. Thanks for taking the time to really share with us your growth, your kind of journey thus far from 2001, reading a book, and then 2018 rolls around. You say, okay, I think now is the time to get into real estate. Did you feel like in that window, in your early 2001 to 2018 window, was there like, okay, there's a better way, or was it just a distraction in your job, or what kept you from really making that leap sooner?
I wasn't ready. I was too immature. And I mean, to be honest, following 2001 to 2008, I just hit in the bottom of a bottle. I mean, in 2009, I look back and I had a Facebook memory celebrating sobriety in 2010.
Yeah.
And I had thought that I was on the 3 case a week plan, but my memory reminded me that I was on the 5 case a week plan.
Yeah.
So got rid of that, and then went back to college again because the first time was so successful. And just started working on myself. And after my first kid was born, like, you know what, I really need to do something better for myself. I was probably 260 then, and it's like, I need to focus on my health because I want to be around for my kid.
Yeah.
And the realization that I needed to do that myself. I'm the only one that can make myself healthier. So focusing on that, and that's what actually got me into the podcasts that talked about health, fitness, self-improvement. And it was on the self-improvement podcast that the real estate syndicator was on.
Wow. And you're like, hey, I've heard of this before. This rings a bell. Got to rewind.
And
years.
I actually went and got the purple book out again because I still had it. It was in the back of a bookshelf covered with dust. Dusted it off and opened it up and just devoured it, and probably 100 other books since then.
What's one personal habit you have right now, or personal discipline you have that you feel like makes you better every day?
For me, going to the gym, lifting heavy things. And that's twofold. Well, multiple. I wouldn't even say two, because there's a litany of reasons. And I mean, strength and muscle is part of it, but putting off the things that will take me down in old age.
Right.
Like, if I have more muscle now, that's more muscle that I can have to lose as I get older.
Right.
And more muscle now means more bone mass, which means my bones won't be as brittle until later.
Right.
So all of that goes to, I want to be here for my kids and I want to do better for my kids. And if I'm not healthy, well, I'm not going to be here for them.
Right. Oh, that's so true. Health is absolutely wealth. And it's funny, man, because yeah, no, I could talk about this all day long, because it's something I have spent too long thinking about, reading about, studying. I mean, cracking the human code of my own code of like, okay, what's it mean to be in, what's my version of healthy look like, and trying to figure that out. That's really, really cool that you do that. Because I think it's important that you bring up the point of like, you're not just going to the gym to be a meathead and make your biceps bigger. I mean, okay, that's cool, but there are long-term health benefits that go right alongside of that you mentioned that I think are very, very compelling. Like, oh, I don't want to be prematurely old. I mean, none of us got here alive, but There's no sense in getting old before it's time. So very, very cool, Mack. I love what you've done in the commercial real estate space. You've taken on an incredibly challenging project, it sounds like, out of the gate, and you're still sticking with it, which I think is a testament to you and to your commitment to continuously learning and, of course, figuring out the commercial real estate game. I love the fact that you got an owner finance deal and how you guys structured that. Very, very cool. Keep up the good work. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Best is either on Instagram, Mack Benson Official, or my website, infinitefocuscapital.com.
infinitefocuscapital.com, and we'll include both that and Mack's social handles there in the show notes. Mack, thank you again for coming on the show today. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks for listening to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate podcast. If you can do me a favor and subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever platform it is you use to listen, if you can do that for us, that would be a fantastic help to the show. It helps us both attract new listeners as well as rank higher on those directories. So appreciate you listening. Thanks so much, and hope to catch you on the next episode.